Hello and welcome. This is the demo section of the webinar we hosted around ensuring a great user experience with Citrix Cloud. Apologies to those of you who attended the live webinar. The technical difficulties were from presenting via WebEx with a HP Velocity driver installed. I suppose the lesson learned for me here is that to record a demo as a backup rather than doing it all live. So apologies for that, and moving on. So the first thing I wanted to share with you was my Azure portal. So I'm logged in here, and as you can see, there are a number of resources hosted up in Microsoft Azure. There's a number of virtual machines here. There's a SQL Server, which is the sort of the back end for the Ivanti Workspace Manager product. There's the actual Ivanti Workspace Manager server. There is a couple of Citrix Cloud connectors, and there is a Server 2016 worker which will present a published desktop to the users here. The next thing I'd like to show is basically just an on-premises. This is a Hyper-V host which is running the equivalent services that you've just seen in Microsoft Azure. If I log on here, what we have is the same sort of 5 virtual machines. We've got our SQL server, which is supporting the Ivanti Workspace Manager server. We've got 2 more Citrix Cloud connectors, and we've got another Server 2016, which will be a worker server to publish a desktop to our users. From here, we want to have a look at the Citrix Cloud service. So if I launch this and I sign into the Citrix Cloud console, we're basically going to use the Citrix Cloud or the Citrix Workspace to tie together our 2 cloud scenarios. Really, we've got our Azure resources, we've got our on-premises resources, and we'd like to use and present those resources to our users. So we have a single domain here. This has all been set up already ahead of the demo. This is just an Avanite.local domain being used for the purposes of the demo. We have 2 resource locations. If we click on here, we can see we have an on Azure location, and we've got the 2 cloud connectors that we could see in the Azure portal. If we highlight these, we can expand them and we can look at the health of them. So this one looks fine at the moment, and the second one is also looking fairly healthy. We go back, we also have a second resource location, which is our on-premises data center. We go into the cloud connectors here, we have one and a second, both looking fairly healthy again. So once we've got our resource locations defined, we can create some resources. We'd go into the XenApp and XenDesktop service, and we would sort of publish out those resources. We create sort of delivery groups as we would normally. It's already been done in this scenario. And then what we would do is we'd go to our library and we can allocate out those resources. So once again, I've already created a number of delivery groups. I've created an on-premises delivery group, which is using the Server 2016 in the on-premises data center, and there is a single subscriber for this, which is my demo user. Also, we have another delivery group defined, which is presenting a desktop from the Server 2016 we saw in Microsoft Azure. We have a single subscriber again, and that's my demo user. And one of the nice features about the Citrix Cloud is we used to have all the Citrix infrastructure in our data centers. We'd have a sort of back-end SQL server which needed to be highly available. We'd have some DDCs, some delivery controllers, which basically would host and proxy the connections for all our users. And we had some storefront servers and some NetScaler resources. But all of this is sort of provided by Citrix as part of the Citrix Cloud Workspace solution. So we can go here to the workspace configuration section, and we've already been provisioned a workspace URL which we can use to configure our receiver client. So if I open my receiver client, I can enter that URL. I can just send this out to my users, and we can click add. We can now authenticate to the provided storefront here. I'm using my demo user for the purposes of this, and we can log on. So we've now connected in, and we are welcome to the Citrix workspace. If we click on the desktops here, we can see that we've got the two resources assigned to us as we did in the Citrix Cloud sort of portal. To launch, we can just click on either of these desktops and it will launch one of our server connections. So I'm launching the on-premises delivery group hosted desktop here. It's just going to go off and connect. So once the connection is established, we're just doing a standard logon to our Server 2016 server, which is in our on-premises data center. And installed on this is the Ivanti User Workspace Manager agent. It's basically managing the personalization for this user with the intention of sort of being able to keep a consistent user experience between our on-premises data center and our Azure data center. This particular user here, he's been using this system for around about a month already, and he's already built up a set of personalization data in the database. So we can see that he has been browsing the web. We look at his browsing history. He's been browsing a number of sites, and he's just gone to the Avanti site today. So what we can do is we can customize this this sort of session for our users. We can change the wallpaper. Users might want to change it to a picture of their cat, or they might get enforced with a corporate workspace. It's entirely up to the administrator what happens there. We can also customize other elements of it, but for the purposes of this, I'm just going to change the background. If I now sign out, it's going to save all that information back to our on-premises Ivanti Workspace Manager instance. So logging onto one of the Ivanti servers, this is our on-premises one. We can just log on as one of our admins, and we can see what data was captured as part of the environment manager log off there. So if we do personalization analysis against our demo user and we click display, we can see that we've captured 13.32 megabytes of personalized data for our Citrix Cloud 1 user, basically my demo user here. This information's basically some of the Office 2016 group. We've got some Internet Explorer data, we've got some Adobe Acrobat stuff. This user had been accessing these apps previously, and if we drill into the majority of the data, this is in our Windows settings and is actually the IE11 cookies and history information and information related to Google Chrome, which is a secondary browser on the system. The next thing would be to try and synchronize that information using the geosync feature that Paul talked about earlier on in the webinar. So if we close that and we go to this Manage tab here, we have the options around the geosync feature. We can click on this and we can basically say synchronize. So we can do an on-demand synchronization, we can schedule synchronization for later, or we can synchronize only the configuration for that personalization group or those sets of users. So my demo user, CTX Cloud 1, is literally in the demo users personalization groups, and you can be quite clever with how you do the synchronization. You can synchronize different groups to different different data centers or different SQL servers. In this scenario, I'm just going to quickly synchronize the data between my on-premises implementation and my Microsoft Azure implementation. With a bit of luck, this won't take too long. And there we go. Synchronization is now complete, so I can close this, and we can go back to our Citrix Receiver client. So if we log on to our Azure worker here via this delivery group, click connect. Once again, got the Ivanti User Workspace Manager installed, and we're now restoring the personalization settings for this user that we've just synchronized across from our on-prem data center. So our desktop's just initializing now, and we have the same wallpaper as we set in our on-premises. So if we launch our browser, we launch Internet Explorer, we go again to the Ivanti webpage, which is our home page in this scenario, and we can look and we'll see that we have the same browsing history and everything that was there previously. So I want to get on to what Avanite adds to this scenario here. So the product web data control is all about managing the web data that accumulates for users. So when this is being roamed between different sessions, we start to see that logons start to slow down because of all the cookie files which are being roamed around, plus the Microsoft web cache file. Google Chrome and Mozilla Firefox also have a large amount of information that starts to accumulate in their respective sort of local profile folders, and web data control is designed to sort of reduce that and keep only the browsing data you need and remove that which you don't. So as an example, in this system here, if we look at the cookies folder, we will see that there are 113 cookies. This is in the normal cookies location, and this is for sites which have been browsed with protected mode disabled. If we look in the low folder here, this would be cookies which have been accumulated from internet browsing based on a standard sort of system. So this user had been browsing the web quite solidly for the month, and he started to accumulate a very large number of cookie files here. There's about 3,900 looking down here. So what Avanite will do, it's installed on this Azure based 2016 server, is during logoff it will basically remove any cookies which are expired. It will remove any advertising and tracking related cookies, and it will leave just the cookies that users actually require to give them a good browsing experience. So we can move from there and we can go and look at our UWM server in Azure. And we can see that it's now only 4.66 meg of data. If we browse in here, we can see that we've still got our data for Office, we've still got our data for Internet Explorer group, we've got some related to Acrobat, but our Windows settings are now down to sort of 4.5 megabytes rather than the sort of 13 megabytes we had before. Google Chrome data is now the largest remaining amount of data, and our IE information has massively reduced. So just to give a bit more sort of thought around that, if I go back and I launch my Azure-based desktop again, It's connecting again. We're logging back on. We're applying our user personalization in this session. And we're now logging back in and being presented with our desktop. We can go back into Internet Explorer. So we've still got our history information. If we look in our cookies folder, we're now down to 16 cookies. And in the low folder, it's gone down to 733. That's basically just applying a sort of standard out-of-the-box rule set from the Avanite side, and we can further reduce that by optimizing it or using a sort of more refined custom configuration. So just as an example of what we're talking about here, so if I go to, say, the BBC website, this is a news site over in the UK, we get a cookie prompt here. So we click continue and we accept cookies from this website, and on a sort of local profile we never see that that prompt ever again. We can also go to Amazon, for example, and we can basically sign in. I'll use my personal email address, and I say keep me signed in here. That will set a persistent cookie for my sign in. And I'm now signed in to Amazon. So if I log off here, and we go over to our on-premises Ivanti server, we can then go to our geosync setup, and we remember we can do a synchronization. I'm going to say synchronize, and it's going to synchronize for the demo users group again as per before. So I say yes. So synchronization is now complete. If we come out of here and we log on to our on-premises delivery group, our desktop's now initializing. So we can go to the BBC website now. So if we go in here, we see that we have already accepted our cookie prompt. And if we go to the Amazon website, we can see that we're still signed in. We log out again, If I quickly jump onto this server here, I'm also running the Ivanti Insight product, so I can sign into the Insight console and I can click on a report to see my logon times. So this shows me the data for my Avanite Citrix Cloud 1 demo user. His average logon here was just over 32 seconds. His longest logon was 71 seconds, and that was on the Azure side with all the web data. But since then, we've had a 13-second logon, which is because we're only retaining the data we need, and we've optimized the data stored in the user workspace management product. So I suppose I end the demo there, and any questions, please feel to reach out to us. Thanks.